Hello class, this is Michael Tweed here, and we're going to continue with basic sort of Illustrator renderings, and we have this drawing I have up on my screen, and we're going to go over the elevation, coloring in the elevation today. There's a few things to point out about the colors and strategies for this, but ultimately it's a lot similar, it's almost identical to doing the floor plan. Now I haven't done the second floor plan in this one, but I'll show you at the end sort of my completed take on this. But I'm really just going to be focused on the elevation here in this assignment. I'm going to use a lot of the same strategies, like using layer order, so I can color over a bunch of things to simplify and quicken rendering, and then use layers on top of those to sort of build up and make it look right. So at the end it sort of looks right. As you choose colors, again, just to reiterate, as you start to think about your elevation colors, this is what the house is going to look like. So it's really good to start thinking about what these colors are going to look like. But again, we're going to go color theory a little bit later. So we'll talk more about what colors you want to choose. But why it's important is because we're going to use this house again and for some Photoshop lessons and some SketchUp lessons and other things like that. So as you start to define your colors now, you might keep those up as you move throughout the semester. So you want to think about it now, keep improving it. We have time to edit in this assignment, in a later assignment, in a later week, I'm sorry. But also, if you say moving on through SketchUp or Photoshop or something, you decide to change the colors, well, it's pretty easy the way we're setting it up. Then you'll have to come back for the sort of final submission, and you want to basically match. Again, all I'm saying is pick your own colors. Don't be too critical at this point, but as we start moving through, we'll start getting our colors further and further nailed down. So just like before, I'm going to use layers, and I'm going to use layer order. I'm going to click a new layer. I'm going to do siding as my first base layer. I'm going to actually do siding 1 because I'm going to start with at least 2 siding colors. You can choose to do it yourself. This is your decision, but I sort of designed this house with vertical siding in some locations and horizontal siding in other locations. So I'm sort of thinking, at the very least, those will be 2 different colors. So I'm going to go and make my vertical siding first. That'll be my siding 1. I'm going to go for sort of a brownish, light brownish color somewhere. Say around there. That's where I'll start. I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to click around. Now, the reality is, again, I'm just doing exactly what I did on the last assignment. And you can see I'll basically go through most all of this to show you. But I have to go through a bunch of work before I get to the windows. And even if you got this down and you can go and color this in all you want, you might jump ahead and look to where I'm talking about windows and sort of what I sort of have as final colors and how I've sort of separated out the final colors if you don't want to watch me do all of this work here. In fact, I'm probably not in this video going to color everything either. It doesn't really matter for you to see. But I do want to do a few things on here to start talking about how we use our layers and thinking about windows and various things. So I'm going to make a new layer and call it siding 2. And I'm going to use this for a splash of color here. So I'm going to give it a sort of reddish maroony color look, and I'm going to do again my horizontal siding in those. Now I'm not taking my color all the way to the ground because that's the foundation, and I'll actually make a foundation layer here for you, or at least I'll show you that I have done that. So that's my siding 2. Let me go, and I could go and fill in the brick, and I probably would fill in the brick if I were not making this video and do various other things. But I'm going to follow up with that. I want to get to this window thing here. So I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call it trim. And the trim's going to be basically, this big thick trim that I put around the windows. I sort of like the really highlighting windows with thick trim. So I'm going to click here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to base it off this siding color. So I'm going to eyedrop my siding color to get this light brown. Then I'm going to double click and just make it a darker sort of version of that, maybe somewhere around there. Again, I'm just starting here. We'll go back in a later assignment and sort of pick this, and then I'll trim around the window like this. And I'm gonna make my roof trim the same as my window trim. You don't have to do that, but I'm gonna do that. By the way, in case you didn't realize, this is a piece of timber. I'm gonna make that a different color, so I'm not gonna worry about that. Now this window has no trim as I've sort of, or as I'm going to be defining it. So I'm not worried about that window right this second. Oops. What I did forget is I should have come out here. So what I need to do is I need to zoom in. I did not intend to do this like I did in the previous assignment. I need to add a few dots. Now we see in my case, for whatever reason, it made the color black. I don't like black because I can't see it on my black lines. So I'm going to double click over here and I can change it from black to whatever any color I want. That's going to allow me to see this a lot better and move this around. I really was not intending to do this. This is purely a mistake on my part, and it is true that even I make mistakes sometimes. I know some of you guys out there listening to this probably find this hard to believe, but it does happen every now and again. I just wish it wasn't caught on video. So we'll do that one. I'm not going to do all the trim, but let me do, just for demonstration purposes, let me do this window as well. In fact, I might make this whole roof the same color as well as the trim, and so I could, in theory, put all that color over there if I wanted to. I don't have to. But let me go ahead and do those two windows for pieces of trim. The next layer I'm going to do is I'm going to do window frames. And I'm going to do that as a different color, and I'm going to pick a light color for a variety of reasons. I like a light color, and I'm going to pick like a silvery color, but also it's going to look good in the rendering to keep offsetting light, dark to be able to really read this. And so I'm just going to strike another square, and most of these windows are square. I'll do this one that's not square, which I would just use the pen tool if it's not square. Right? And so basically I'm filling all this in, and it's still not quite right, but it's a good place to start. And again, it's just using layers. So originally this might have had light brown, now it has dark brown over it. Now it's going to have this sort of what I'm going to call silver color. All right? And the next thing I want to do is I want to add some glass to this. Now again, students oftentimes, they want to make glass either like a really blue color, or they want to do something else. At this point, I'm going to actually choose a dark grayish blue color. Now, we're going to spend other assignments or in other weeks looking through how to make windows look even better, but I'm going to start with a dark grayish blue. And the reason for that is if you actually go outside and look outside a window on a clear, bright day, where a building is not necessarily reflecting anything, nor is there any shade inside the window, windows are actually a dark grayish color. Now, any of these other factors will change the color of those windows, and we'll start to look at rendering techniques again throughout the entire semester on how to do that. But as a generic starting point, a dark gray to a dark grayish blue is a place to start. So I'll come in on a layer on top of that, come back in and fill in another square, and so I've sort of layered up the colors to pretty easily. I'll come back and do my pen tool on that one in a second. I'll just go and fill this window in. Click, 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 click. Oops, I didn't close off that last one, so to undo that to close it off there. And what I'm going to do, once I'm done with this one, there's still a lot of things on this particular elevation I haven't finished. It's all the same technique. You should be getting it. It's mostly using the pen tool and using layer order. But what I'll do is I'll flip over to sort of a finalized version of the elevation rendering. And I shouldn't say finalized because we will be learning other lessons on this. But for today's part, we'll finalize it. And I'll show you all the layers and all the coloring I did. But again, feel free to choose your own color. So if I zoom over here, here's my elevation. We can see I did all the windows in that same technique. My colors might not be exactly the same, but I filled in this roof color, same as the trim, as I mentioned. I had this foundation line down here, the foundation coming up. I just made it a light gray. I did my brick in sort of a dark gray. Arguably, I might need to darken up that color a little bit as I sit here and look at it now. I like sort of a dark gray color brick. You might like red brick. You might not choose to do red here, so like you might choose to do a different color. Bricks also come in other colors like browns and things like that. So go ahead and select the colors you want. You can see here I've got like the timber. Here I sort of made it a light brown just for a wood color for now. But maybe yours is painted, maybe it's a color, whatever you want it to be. I sort of made my decking the same color as that because again, decking just made of wood, just that's what came to my mind. But you might choose to do something else. Maybe this becomes concrete in yours. That's an option as well. But have it all sort of filled in like this. Of course, with my floor plan, 2 floor plans, I have it all filled in like this. So we can see my layers correspond: siding 1, siding 2, brick, foundation, trim, frames, glass, and then timber. Most of that has to be in that order. For example, siding needs to be below trim, and trim needs to be below frames, and frames need to be below glass. But where brick exactly goes, it probably didn't make much of a difference. Where timber goes, probably didn't make much of a difference. But this is where we'll stop here. We're gonna do a bunch of things to these colors. As I mentioned, we'll do color theory and pick better colors, make our floor plans match better to our elevations, make our elevation color match better with itself. We're also going to do various rendering techniques and follow-up assignments. We're going to make the glass look different. We're going to add skies and grass. We're going to add scale figures, all those good things that make a good drawing we have not done yet. This is the most basic of Illustrator work. It is what anybody can do. It's a okay drawing, but it's not a good drawing. It's not a great drawing. That's going to be for follow-up assignments. So keep that all in mind as you're moving forward. I'm going to have a short video after this to finish up this week's assignment, which is about text, but I'll pick that up in a new video.